Hey watchers, welcome back to the channel. Today I am featuring, yes, a piece from Omega. So look at that lovely little insert there, that steel insert on this faux leather case. So those of you who have Omega watches, you recognize this kind of red faux leather case that they use for most of the last 20 years. They have now upgraded to a wooden box, but this is what it used to be, and this is from the late 90s. So yes, it does tend to deteriorate over time. That's one of the little weaknesses of these cases. So let's just open this up and show you the watch in question here. So there we go. A lot of this watch is going to be very recognizable to Omega fans. If you don't already recognize it, this is indeed the Pierce Brosnan Omega Seamaster. So this one is the 2541.AT00, in contrast to the automatic version, which is the 2531.AT00. Essentially, they look very much the same. The difference, of course, is that this is the Quartz. This was the watch in GoldenEye. On the subsequent movies, he used the automatic version. All right, so this is originally, I'm not really exactly sure how much this was, but it was around 1,000 USD. Around that mark was the retail. So how amazing it was at the time. 20 years ago, you could get your hands on one of these for around that price. Of course, slightly more for the automatic when that came out in terms of the recommended retail price. The movement in this watch here is a little bit different. Whether you call it a high-end quartz or not, this is a caliber 1538, Omega 1538. It is based on an ETA quartz movement, the 255.461. It is a 6-jewel quartz with 42 months estimated battery life, end of life indicator, meaning the seconds hand will tick along 3 or 5 seconds at a time when the battery is low. And the different thing about this watch, it does have an independent hour setting. So the way you would set the hour is, you don't actually need to hack it. So when you pull out to the first position, you can actually start setting the hour hand independently of hacking and independently of the minute hand. So there we go. That's really how this watch functions. If you want to change the date, you'd have to go around twice, 24 hours to flick the date. So it's not super quick change. It's, I guess, a semi quick set date is what you would call that. So I've seen that written as a semi quick set date. The case here, a lot of you will know that this watch is a 41mm diameter case, 316L steel, of course. In this case, it is actually only 11mm thick. So for this kind of like tool style, I guess a high-end tool style watch is pleasingly thin thanks to the quartz movement. Having said that, though, the automatic version, I believe, was only 11.5mm, so really only half a millimeter thicker than the quartz version here. And that's really one of the main differences, if not the only difference in terms of aesthetic encasing between this and the automatic 2531 version. The lug width here is 20mm with a lug-to-lug distance of 47.5mm. Overall weight of this watch is 143 grams with the quartz on the steel bracelet. So it's not overly heavy by any means. It's kind of more like a light to medium weight for a steel diver in the range of steel divers that I have seen. Okay, so moving to the finishing description here. So you can see there's an aluminium insert, and that's that very well liked aluminium insert with a very clear printing there, all right, in the blue. The brushed bezel is this kind of well-known scallop bezel is what we call it. The top surface of the lugs inside, it's going to be hard for me to show you, but there's actually a bit of a radial brushing pattern here. But of course, most of this is actually this beveled edge here, which has the polish. So there's a well-known kind of Seamaster case finishing, which is well loved, that knurled type of shape there. And then it transitions onto longitudinal brushing on the side. Of course, you can see the sign crown there. This one's the more of the surface you can see there. The longitudinal brushing on the side there. At the bottom, you're going to see a polished undersurfaces of the lugs. There's a circular brushing on the case back, and then of course that very famous, pretty, Omega case back there, that stamped pattern with the Omega Seamaster in the middle for the Seamaster range. Okay, so with that screw-in case back and that unusual 5-hole, opening that you can see there, screw-in crown, sign crown, of course, you can see there, and also just to note, there is this talking point, the Helium escape valve, which is a kind of open and close as you will. Right, so that Helium escape valve, the rating on this is a 300 meter water rating, right? That's in the name of the watch. It's the Omega Seamaster 300M, all right? This is what this is, a 300 meter watch. Okay, moving on to the dial now. So the dial here is, of course, that very well-known, the very famous blue wave dial. It does have printed details. So the details here are essentially all printed in an Omega Seamaster Professional at the bottom, the chapter ring around the outside, as well as all the indices are printed. The indices, of course, are filled with C3 superluminova, and that has superluminova on all the usual spots, including those skeletonized sword hands and a kind of lollipop second hand with a red tip that you can see there. Right, so that's really the dial, and then right here I will put a loom shot for you guys to see how it looks like in the dark. On top of that, surrounding that dial is a unidirectional, steel with aluminium insert dive style bezel, and yes, it is 120 click, and that's how it feels. Very solid. Nothing less that you would expect from a Seamaster, and that's how it feels. And it's slightly criticized is that the scalloped edge is not as easy to grab as some other versions of bezels. Certainly not as easy to grab, most people think, as a coin edge bezel. Okay, and then above that is a dome sapphire crystal. I believe the anti-reflective coating in this case is just on the inside as opposed to on both sides. All right, description of the case done. Let's move on to the bracelet, and this is the very well-known, one of the best in the business Seamaster bracelet. So it's alternating brush, polish, brush in the middle, and then much on the other side. So in terms of how many pieces there are in this, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 piece per link, and it is truly, look at that, each piece is distinct. 9 piece per link bracelet. A lot of work goes into this particular steel bracelet. It does have solid end links, but in this case it is actually pin and collar. So back in the day, Omega was still using pin and collar security for the bracelet adjustment, and a lot of you will already know that about these bracelets. The clasp, there are no shortcuts on this clasp, thankfully. It is actually a solid steel push button deployant clasp, solid arms, and a very, very solid dive extension here. All right, so let's just put it on for the wrist shot. That's how you kind of clip in the dive extension, and then on it goes on the wrist, and there we have it, the Omega Seamaster Professional 300M in quartz on my 17 centimeter wrist with 47.5 lug to lug distance. I think this is a very, very nice size for me. It's a large watch, but I think it fits comfortably on a wrist of my size, and I don't think I have a very big wrist, so this would be suitable for a lot of gentlemen, I think. All right, that's how it looks. Look at that beauty, that very comfortable design, and the way it sits on the wrist is, I think, partly why this watch has been so loved, James Bond marketing notwithstanding. All right, so what can I say about a classic like this? I think it's very difficult to talk a lot in terms of something that is so well known, so well loved. I think it's an absolutely classic design, nearly legendary now. It's kind of getting into vintage, right? It's no longer produced, this case and this design. They've upgraded it twice since. The Seamaster casecraft is, it is just a lovely casecraft. There is nothing else in my collection that is like this apart from Seamasters. That wave dial is just something that is gorgeous to look at, and I can look at that. almost all day. It's just a nice thing to actually lay your eyes on that wave dial pattern, that handset. It's a bit criticized because it's slightly short, but it is actually an absolutely classic handset, beautifully done in polished steel. And that bracelet, really like the Seamaster bracelet. That's just my personal thing. Some people don't like it, but I really do like the Seamaster bracelet. The things to take note of, the weaknesses that people do point out, right? Okay, the infamous short hands. You can see there, the minute hand definitely does not reach those indices, the minute indices, and you kind of should make it reach a bit longer. And Omega have improved on that, but that's one of the things that people criticize this watch for, as well as that hour hand. That hour hand is also a little bit on the short side, not as important as a minute hand, but people have said that that should be longer, and Omega have subsequently made that longer. And then the early design concessions to note, it is actually a fully printed dial. There isn't a single applied element there. That has been upgraded. It's not a screw bracelet, it's a pin and collar, and I guess these days they would not release one like this anymore. It will be all screw bracelet. And then the Seamaster clasp, as good as it is, there is no micro adjustment. Now you can actually buy I think a Planet Ocean clasp that has a bit of a micro adjustment capability, but this one, as it comes, does not have any micro adjustment. You're going to have to pull out a link or a half link if you want to adjust it to your wrist size. All right, so that's most of the review here. And lastly, just to finish up, I want to compare this with the next model up, the successor. So this one here is something I reviewed very early on the channel. I think this is a video number 5 or 7, if I recall correctly. So this is, of course, the successor to this watch. There was a very briefly produced wave dial version of the Co-Axial, but this one really is the one that has been going on for quite a few years. I think it came out in 2011, or at least it was unveiled in 2011, and since then has been produced until very recently. The newest model has taken over. So this one, the model number of this watch is 212.30.41.20.03.001. So they've gone ridiculously long as opposed to this one that was much shorter. So this one, just to point out, it is actually a coaxial movement here. It's a lacquer dial, not a wave dial. It does have applied indices. It does have a ceramic insert as opposed to a aluminium insert, and the bracelet is also an upgraded one that you can see there. Right, so what's the comparison? Well, okay, so just to point out the things that are worse, all right, the handset, all right, on the old model is not as good, and I think that's widely commented on, right? They've improved it with a longer handset. The minute now reaches right to the chapter ring, and I think most people consider that an improvement. This one has all applied indices as well as applied Omega logo, you can see there, as well as a date disc that is colored to the dial with silver printing, and most people do consider that an improvement to the white disc, but that's a bit subjective, I guess. The white disc does give this a bit more preserved symmetry, whereas this one it detracts from the symmetry. So I guess that's not an objective improvement, but that's just something that is more costly to do on this watch. Ceramic insert that I've commented on. And the updated case back, I'll show you the case back. So this one is more of the classic kind of Omega. That was what they did in the past. This one you can see, there's just upgraded in all ways. It's a lot more depth to it, right? A lot more three-dimensional and a larger logo. And I think most people think that that's prettier for sure. All right, so those are the things where this one is worse. Now, where is this one worse? Well, one thing is the bezel thickness, right? Is that a bad or good thing? I think most people consider that it's less refined. This actually looks more refined. It looks like it was harder to do that thin bezel. I'm not sure why this has been made thicker. Maybe it's partly to do with the ceramic insert, but you can see it is noticeably thicker, and as a result, this watch is actually 13 millimeters thick as opposed to the 11.5 of the automatic, or 11 millimeters on the Quartz version of the older watch here. The bezel font visibility is something that is a bugbear of this ceramic. They've improved that in the new models with their liquid metal, I think they call it. So this one looks a bit grayish. So as you put it side by side, I think there's no doubt that the bezel on the left watch is a lot more readable, a lot more visible, those numerals that you can see there. And then the bracelet clasp, you know, I guess is something I'll point out. So you can see the newer class has a smaller clasp body, but it does have a lot more of the clasp outside it. So this arms are outside there, and then you've got this kind of bump here, how it integrates. Okay, so that's a different thing. Whereas this one, if you look at it there, if you fold it in, you can see, whilst it's a larger clasp body, the entire thing is integrated and there's no bump, right? It's a smooth kind of clasp there. And some people say they like this one. Other people say they like this one because it shows you more of the links and less of this clasp body. So it's a bit subjective, but you know, a lot of people do kind of say that, well, they don't prefer how they've made this one, you know, with that bump, with that thing, how it sits outside. They prefer that one, how it was fully integrated. I think you could prefer either side, but it seems like more people prefer this one rather than the new one. Okay, so that's it really. That's kind of the comparison between the old and the new. I mean, the movement I will mention now, those are the aesthetic things. The inside, the movement, of course, is also upgraded. This one is a coaxial, you know, slightly slower beat rate, 25-200 as opposed to 28-800 in the old automatic, based on the same movement at a 28-92, but this one was just a standard at a 28-92. This one is upgraded with coaxial, so more costly. And then lastly, one thing I haven't quite mentioned directly is the difference in the dial, so let you see that. Right, which one do you prefer? Let me know. Wave versus lacquer. I think this has definitely grown on me, and over time, initially I did want a wave one, but I got this one, and over time this definitely grows on you, this beautiful lacquer dial. So guys, there we have it. Rather long video of a comparison between these two beautiful watches, one a blast from the past and then one that is you know, up until recently the current Omega Seamaster model. This one isn't discontinued yet. You can still get this. It is still listed on the Omega website. So there we go, two fantastic watches. I could wear either of this all day long. So guys, if you enjoy my videos, do consider subscribing. I put out new content every week, always aiming to be objective and unbiased about all things horology. Thank you again for sticking with me, and as always, I'll catch you guys again next time.